to connect with the audience today. We have a wonderful program, and before we get started, I would like to introduce ADC National President and my esteemed boss, Samer Khalaf, to start us off with a few words.
Wow, I feel like I'm at a graduation with the music. It's that season. Well, welcome everyone out of COVID hibernation. I hope everyone made it out safely, healthy. I'm hoping that you and your families survived this continuing pandemic. It's always good to at the end of this, to get out and sort of shake off the cobwebs, to get to know each other once again, live and in person, not over Zoom or any other social media app that everyone's using. So on behalf of the board, on behalf of the staff, on behalf of the volunteers, on behalf of the entire ADC family, welcome to the first post-COVID ADC convention, Gala. None of this, of course, would never have happened if it wasn't for the hard and dedicated work of our staff, who I'd like to introduce and thank them, and I hope you join me in thanking them as well. I can't see right now because of the lights glaring, so I'm going to assume they're going to be out there and waving. The first, of course, is Janan Dina, who you've already is our MC, who's our national organizer. We also have Chris Habibi, who's our government relations person. He's out on the front desk right now, but he's done a tremendous job with, representing us and our community up on the Hill. We also have our legal director, Abed Ayoub, who's here with us. And of course, we have our legal intern for the summer, Brooke Siegler. Is Brooke here? Wave, because I can't see. So whenever we gather around in one of the ADC's conference, I'm gonna get to Nabil. Whenever we gather, we like to see old friends, and reacquaint ourselves with them. And of course, one of our oldest friends here at ADC, the oldest serving, not the oldest, but the longest tenured member of our staff is my Vice President, Nabil Muhammad. Nabil is the veteran to one of these, and quite honestly, without his knowledge, we would never have been able to pull something like this off, ever. But welcome, thank you for being here. We've had a great sort of mini convention, talking about how our lives have been transformed in this post-COVID world, how our youth are being active, how we as a community are coming together, and how we as a community can better ourselves, and of course our country, and of course our countries of origin. So thank you for being here. I hope you have a good time, and I hope you enjoy yourselves.
This music is like the Academy Awards. So I guess if I go over my time or I'm boring, you're gonna cut off my mic. Is that what's gonna happen, Ibrahim? So we have a great program tonight. We're very excited to honor so many amazing Arab Americans in our community who have been doing phenomenal work in so many different careers and professions. And I know that we have a wonderful featured speaker, Paul O'Brien from Amnesty International USA, who's going to speak later on. Before we begin, I wanted to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. So I definitely want to thank the hotel staff and the management for all of the amazing work that they've done. So can we give them a round of applause? They have been so accommodating yesterday, all day today. They are absolutely wonderful, and so I wanted to make sure we thank them. Also, our production team with Ibrahim and Scully, they put this together. This is absolutely beautiful. Let's give them a round of applause. And then, of course, you all give yourselves a round of applause. You all look beautiful, and you got all dressed up, and you made it all the way out here on a Saturday in DC, where it's really hard to find parking. So kudos to all of you. You know, we have definitely seen a lot happen in the last 2 years since the pandemic began, and more so importantly within the last year. And we all know that the struggle for liberation in Palestine continues, and that we are all working very hard, especially at ADC. And that's one of my primary focuses as the national organizer, is to focus on Palestine as an issue here and how we can engage as an Arab American community in order to help Palestinians overseas. And so before we begin the evening, I want to take a moment of silence for Shireen Abu Akleh, Omar Assad, and all of the Palestinian youth and political prisoners who have been brutalized and murdered and oppressed by the state of Israel and the apartheid state. And so if we can just all have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So with that said, we are going to kick off our speakers with a very special message all the way from Palestine with the Archbishop Hanat Atallah, who wanted to be here with us today, and we had originally had him scheduled as our keynote speaker, but because of everything happening in Palestine, he decided that he did not want to leave his people and come to the US, but he did want to congratulate us and send us a message, and so we will turn to the screens for a short video, followed by a translation.
الإخوة والأخوات الأحباء والأعزاء المجتمعين في مؤتمر ADC في واشنطن العاصمة، وهي اللجنة الأمريكية العربية لمكافحة التمييز العنصري. تجتمعون لكي تؤكدوا على المبادئ السامية التي تنادون بها، وهي الدفاع عن قضايا العدالة ورفض التمييز العنصري بكافة أشكاله وألوانه. كان من المفترض أن أكون معكم، ولكن أوضاعنا في القدس لم تسمح لنا بالسفر، ولذلك فإنني أخاطبكم عبر هذه الكلمات، موجها تحيتي، محبتي، تقديري لكل واحد منكم، وتمنياتي بأن يكون النجاح حليفكم في هذا المؤتمر الهام. من القدس أخاطبكم أيها الأحباء. هذه المدينة المقدسة التي نعتبرها كفلسطينيين عاصمتنا وحاضنة مقدساتنا وأخوتنا الإنسانية والوطنية. القدس تتعرض لحملة غير مسبوقة بهدف النيل من هويتها وتاريخها وتراثها وأبناء شعبها، كما هي القضية الفلسطينية كلها تتعرض لمؤامرات غير مسبوقة هادفة لتصفيتها. ما أتمناه منكم أن تضعوا القدس على أجندتكم، أن تضعوا فلسطين على برنامجكم. من واجبنا جميعا أن ندافع عن القدس وأن ندافع عن فلسطين، وشكرا لكم.
So I'd like to welcome to the stage Saeed Arakat, who is going to translate that for those of us who don't understand Arabic.
Good evening, everyone. Of course, I apologize for not having the commanding voice or presence of Abuna Atallah, so you have to forgive me on that. Dear beloved brothers and sisters gathered in Washington, D.C. at the ADC convention, the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, to struggle against discrimination everywhere and in every form. I was supposed to be with you, but our conditions in Jerusalem do not allow us to travel. And that is why I address you through this video with these words, saluting each one of you and wishing you success in this important conference. From Jerusalem, I address you, my beloved ones, this holy city that we as Palestinians consider our capital and the cradle of our holy sites and our human and patriotic brotherhood. Jerusalem is subjected to an unprecedented campaign to undermine its identity, history, heritage, and people. As is the entire Palestinian cause, it is targeted by unprecedented conspiracies aimed at its liquidation. What I wish from you is that you put Jerusalem on your agenda, that you put Palestine on your agenda. It is our duty, all of us, to defend Jerusalem and to defend Palestine. Thank you.
I think we can all agree that Saeed did a wonderful job with that translation. Those words were very powerful. And I think someone stole my agenda. Guess we're just gonna wing it now. Saeed, do you have my paper? I'm gonna take back all the nice things I just said about you. Thank you so much. Okay. So it is time for our first awardee. We are awarding the Dr. Raymond Jallows Award. And the awardee this year is someone who's very near and dear to ADC. And I'm going to have Samir Khalaf come up again and introduce Anton Hajjar.
Yes, it's me again. But I promise you the whole evening is not about me, and I'm not going to be up here all the time. I sort of got the honor of introducing Anton only because of what Anton has meant for me in my life, because Anton was one of my legal mentors when I was in law school. And in fact, if it wasn't for Anton, I would not have gotten into the field of union-side labor law. And quite honestly, and I don't know if I should thank you for this or curse you for this, it was Anton is why I became president of ADC. So I don't know if that's here or near. The award is named after Dr. Raymond Jallows, who is a world-renowned economist and someone who basically wanted us to give out an award in his name to honor those Arab Americans that have achieved greatly in their professions. And I think Anton has sort of reached the epitome of his profession. He started out in Brooklyn. Although he hasn't been living in Brooklyn for a long time, if you heard him speak, you would automatically know that Brooklyn has not left his heart or his mind. Anton is sort of the consummate hippie, the 60s child that never sold out, the 60s idealist that never gave up on his ideals. Anton put himself through law school, basically driving a cab, driving a truck, and every once in a while hitched up and became a merchant marine and worked on a cargo ship. He would later go on to clerk for Justice Wisdom, who's considered a pioneer in the legal field. He would go on to become a labor lawyer, to represent the Postal Workers Union for quite some time, eventually becoming the National General Counsel for the Postal Workers Union. He was appointed to the American Law Institute. where he actually was involved in writing a lot of the treatises and a lot of the law books that I studied in law school and that everybody else here who is in law school or went to law school has also studied. After he retired, he was recently appointed by President Biden to become a member of the U.S. Postal Service's Board of Governors, a position that he had to go through Senate ratifications, and since then has been elected as vice chair of the Board of Governors of the Postal Service, which is basically one of the pinnacles of what he could have achieved in his life. So with that, I please join me in welcoming and congratulating Anton Hajar.
Thank you very much, Samer. As you can tell, I am from Brooklyn, and I am not Joe Pesci. Ladies and gentlemen, ADC is the foremost civil rights organization in America, advocating for protecting and connecting the Arab American community in the United States. I thank ADC for this wonderful award. I will cherish it forever. I also want to thank my wife, Sandra Hughes, my daughter, Claire, and her partner, Scott Davies, for sharing this event with me. I would also like to thank ADC for putting a 10-year-old photograph of me in the program. Getting a Lifetime Achievement Award naturally causes one to reflect on his or her lifetime. I've been privileged to have had a career in the law. It has enabled me to do meaningful work in my two areas of passion, the rights of workers and civil rights, particularly the rights of our Arab American community. Another passion is the United States Postal Service. I'm particularly gratified that the White House announcement of President Biden's nomination of me to be a governor of the United States Postal Service highlighted my affiliation with ADC. If you have complaints about the mail, mail them to me. As some of you know, the terrorist attacks of 9/11/01 initiated me into the Arab American civil rights issues. When my daughter Claire, who is here, returned to school 2 days later, a high school classmate threatened to kill her because she is Arab American. She bravely stood up to his threat. My Arab American identity became central to me on that fateful day. When I consider lifetime achievements, I think of lifelong dedication to the rights and welfare of our community. Of course, there's our founding father, Jim Aberrest. I think of my longtime activist friends, Abdeen Jabbar, Albert Mukhaiber, and Denise Sabah. And of course, there's our chairman, Dr. Safa Rifka, President Samer Khalaf, Legal and Policy Director Abed Ayub, and Vice President Nabil Mohammed, with whom I've worked closely over the years, helping in my small way to advance the mission of ADC. And I must add a man I often refer to as my hero in the law, Jonathan Kutab, who has spent a lifetime litigating and advocating for Palestinians in Palestine, Israel, and the United States. If I were to list everyone I believe are deserving of this award for lifetime dedication to our community, I would have to violate the time limits of my remarks. I salute them and my colleagues at ADC, and I thank all of you for what you do for our Arab American community. Shukran jazilan.
Very well deserved, Anton. I only worked with him just a little bit in the beginning of 2020 before the pandemic hit, but I know that there's no one more deserving of this Lifetime Achievement Award. You know, these lights are so bright and I can't see people's faces, and I don't know if I like that. But maybe it's good because then I can't see if you guys are like scowling at me or like giving me dirty looks. So we're gonna keep on moving with our program because you guys can't eat until I say so. And so I want to make sure you guys don't come after me. And so we're going to go into our second award. And our second award is the Ralph Johns Award. And I'm going to introduce Abid Ayoub, who is going to introduce the awardee for this award. Abid?
Thank you, Janan. Thank you. Pretty bright up here. But the Ralph Johns Award, we are honored to have with us and to present the award to Dr. Jihan Al-Bayoumi. Real quick about the Ralph Johns Award before we get into Dr. Jihan's achievements and background. It's named after Ralph Johns, an unsung hero of the civil rights movement, who risked his own life and safety to support the 1960s sit-ins, civil rights movement in general, and sparked change in this country. As an Arab American, Mr. Johns was a tireless defender of civil rights for all Americans. He was actually one of the first non-black, non-African Americans to serve as president of an NAACP chapter and really put his life out there to defend the rights of everybody and to care for everybody. And it's this nature and it's this belief and it's these achievements that led us to presenting the award to Dr. Jihan Al-Bayoumi. And this is the first year we present the award to a non-attorney, but given the past 2 years of what's gone on in this country, I think COVID would have been a lot worse if lawyers were leading the efforts to get rid of it. So, you know, let us first give a round of applause to all the doctors, the first responders, everybody that over the past 2 years was out there, you know, the frontline workers putting themselves so we can be back here in person. And Dr. Jihan has done, you know, incredible work, not just, you know, during COVID, but pre-COVID as well throughout her career. She received her Bachelor of Science and Medical degrees from the University of Michigan, which is the best college in the world. She then completed her residency and chief residency in internal medicine at the George Washington University and was the program director for the internal medicine residency for 15 years prior to founding the Rodham Institute. The institute, named for Dorothy Rodham, was established to improve health equity in Washington, D.C. The Rodham Institute's 3 areas of focus are youth educational program and health workforce development, training the current and future healthcare team about applied health equity and community collaborations and partnerships. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Rodham Institute distributed 560,000 masks and hand sanitizer to underserved communities. It held over 50 webinars about a wide-ranging area of topics related to the COVID crisis, including mental health, vaccination education, how the pandemic has impacted various communities that are historically overlooked, such as the disabled and deaf and hard of hearing. These webinars featured both academic and community-based organizations to highlight their work. Several partner church leaders participated and live-streamed these webinars. And Dr. Bayoumi was a constant contributor on national media and a constant resource for all of us. So I do want to call Dr. Jihan up to accept the award and give some remarks. Thank you.
like I'm on CNN or something with this music, don't you? I want to tell you who I had lunch with today. I had lunch with Dr. Hanna and his wife, Paula. Dr. Hanna is the khal, the maternal uncle of Shireen Abu Atla. And I had invited them to the dinner tonight, and it was too overwhelming. The last time they spoke to her was on her birthday, and I never had the pleasure or honor of meeting her, but I asked them, what did they want me to say? First and foremost, I want to tell you that I'm dedicating this award to her because she is my heroine. She's someone who dedicated her life to exposing the truth and getting the word out to international audiences. That's why she was targeted. That's why she was assassinated, and that's why she was murdered in cold blood. We know that people like her who have struggled in many struggles, whether in South Africa, whether here in the United States, whether in Palestine, pay the price. And for those who don't pay the immediate price of being assassinated or murdered, they pay the slow price. As a physician, I want to remind everybody that in the apartheid state of Israel, ambulances are often stopped from going to take care of people who are in distress. Dialysis machines are not available. Physicians, nurses, and other clinicians are sometimes targeted and killed and tortured. This is what apartheid means. And I want to tell you, I'm of a certain age. I grew up in the 70s. My parents were activists, and so we learned about a number of liberation movements in the world. It was not unusual for me to know about South Africa, Zimbabwe, Palestine, of course. And I want to remind people that South Africa's relationship, not only with our government here in the United States, but also in Israel, it was the trifecta. People often get discouraged about what's happening in Palestine. My two best friends are Palestinians, Nahida and Mona. And often I have to talk to them and remind them of Soweto, of Biko's murder, of all the people that paid the price, and then about the allies that the South African people had. The white South Africans, the Afrikaners, who were brave and stood up and risked their lives. They were shunned, and I should tell you, many were Jews who took up this cause. I want to talk about the importance of allies because Ralph Johns was an ally of the people in the African diaspora. We need allies. I believe that COVID has exposed a lot, and people here in the United States and Americans have been forced to look at their own prejudices and biases. As somebody who's interested in health equity, I can tell you that a few miles from here in Southeast, we have the same rates of HIV as Namibia and the same infant mortality rate as El Salvador and Cambodia. The per capita rates of cancer are highest right here in Washington, D.C., in the United States of America. The highest stage of end-stage kidney disease, the highest per capita HIV rates per capita are highest in the United States. The biggest gap in life expectancy in this 10-mile span is right here in Washington, D.C., in the United States. Close to where I live, I don't live in Georgetown, I live in Glover Park, the life expectancy on average is 94 years. Right here in Anacostia, it is 66 and a half years. Apartheid exists in many places, and sometimes as an Egyptian, an Arab, a Muslim, an African, not from the diaspora, but from the continent, I get criticized. Why are you working with people from the African diaspora? Well, I would say, ask somebody like Miko Peled, who is here among us. Why does he ally himself with Palestinians? Because it takes a coalition. It takes all of us, because a Palestinian who is discriminated against and murdered, that's an affront to all humanity. A person in the African diaspora who is gunned down or treated as less than human, that's an affront to all of humanity. And it's not lost on me, and I've been saying this, not on CNN, but in other public places, that Southeast is very much like apartheid in Palestine. I talk about the gentrification, and I compare the rich white yuppies that are moving into these communities as Israeli settlers, because they own it. It's as though there's nothing happening, no people, none of the 200,000 people that live in Southeast. So I urge you, no matter what is your primary cause, and of course Philistine is dear and near to our hearts, and don't let anybody fool you, Egyptians support Palestine. I was in Egypt at the beginning of March with my family, and the Ukraine war was just starting. Every Egyptian that I ran into said, what is the coverage of Ukraine? What about the Palestinians? What about the Palestinians? It's so criminal. So I want to tell you that even though Egypt was the first country to be strangled, we stand as Egyptians, Egyptian Americans, with the Palestinian. That will never, never, ever change. Finally, in closing, you can tell that I have very strong feelings, right? I want to say thank you to the ADC. I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you for the staff, as Janan has so nicely and eloquently thanked everybody. I think that's important because we're all spokes on a wheel. And finally, جنان دمها خفيف مش كده؟ لذيذة. لازم في عرق مصري ولا إيه؟ شكراً.
I don't even know if I even want to go on after that beautiful speech. Give it up to Dr. Gigi again, please. I had the pleasure of meeting her virtually during COVID. We did 2 webinars together for the Arab American community to dispel, myths about COVID that were going around in the auntie and uncle WhatsApp group chats, right? And I thought it was very important that we bring someone on, but also the work that she does in Washington, D.C. as someone who's lived in D.C. now for 5 years. I do see the disparities, and I do see how anything beyond the river in Anacostia, definitely there is different treatment. I've seen the city gentrified over the last 5 years as well. The work that she does is immeasurable and so, so important to achieve true equity for people who are minorities and who are underserved. So we are almost at dinner, almost, just shway shway. We were expecting to have like a comedian today as the MC, and then unfortunately you guys got me instead. Thank you, Tawfiq, thank you. So I hope I'm like giving you guys just a little bit of laughter, a little bit of, joy as we're, thank you. See, look at all my supporters. I appreciate it. Thank you. So our next awardee is going to be presented by Najat Khalil. So I'm going to invite her up to the stage to introduce the recipient of our Hala Maqsood Award.
God, you could get blinded by this light. I'm gonna do something that is not really done, especially after Dr. Jihan's speech about the issue of Palestine. So this is something as dear to me, hopefully. But what I'm gonna get out of really proper way of saying is to show you the quilts that are hanging here and what they mean and how they happen to be. These quilts, now the pieces that you're seeing here, they are 2 quarters, one quarter each piece of them, that were made in 1998 to celebrate, to say celebrate, this is the wrong word, just to document the 50th anniversary of the Nakba. Each one of these squares, has the same, the name of one village that destroyed, plus the number of citizens who were there and they were also killed or became homeless, and the date it was done. This to remind people with what happened to the Palestinians, and it's still happening. And it just, made me come to that in addition to what I was planning to do with what Dr. Bayoumi said. So this is really, and the most important part of doing that quilt, which had 418 square, because that's the number of villages that were destroyed on that day in 1948. So that we had it on June 6, 1998, displayed in front of the Capitol, where everybody from congressmen, senators, when they pass, they will see it, and they would ask us questions. At the same time, we had, speakers. And those squares were hand embroidered by Palestinian families here who belong to organizations. And because this project was maybe the first and only project that all Arab American organizations participated in creating and doing those things. So please look at them, and maybe if some of you lost somebody in a village, might find the name and find what they said. So I just kind of wanted to say sorry to Zena for delaying this thing. So, I just want to take a breath. Well, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Zena Azzam, and to say that she's receiving, to congratulate her on receiving the Hala Salam Maqsood Leadership Award. ADC presents the Hala Salam Maqsood Leadership Award annually to a community leader who has shown outstanding achievement, leadership, strength, and compassion towards the concerns of the community. Zena Azzam, a Palestinian-American poet, writer, editor, and community activist. She was selected in April of 2022 as the Poet Laureate of the city of Alexandria, Virginia. She's the first Arab American to hold this position. Her book, Baina Baina, In Between, was published in 2021, and sorry, in 2021, and I'm just still shaking. And sorry, in Maryland, poet. Okay, now I'm gonna catch my breath. Okay. In Maryland, the poet laureate, Grace Cavalieri, written that Azam, I put quote, creates a world of beauty and patience, even when ideals are shattered. Her poems also appeal in over 40 literary journals, and Zena Azam participated regularly in poetry readings locally and nationally. She lives in Alexandria, Virginia, and she serves as a mentor for We Are Not Numbers, a writing program for youth in Gaza and volunteers for organizations that support Palestinians' human rights and development. She is also active in Grassroots Alexandria, a local group that advocates for civil rights of vulnerable communities in Alexandria, Virginia, where she lives. Her education background includes a master's degree in Arabic literature from Georgetown University, another master's degree in sociology from George Mason University, and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Vassar College. Please join me in congratulating Zena Azam for receiving the Hala Maqsood Leadership Award.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted to be here tonight and incredibly honored to receive this year's Hala Salam Maqsood Leadership Award. And how beautiful to share this celebration tonight with my esteemed companions, Layla Fadel, Dr. Gigi al-Bayoumi, Anton Hajar, and the organization Amnesty International. You're all such champions in your field, and I have profound respect for you and your work. And also, I'd like to recognize the recipients of the Dr. Jack Shaheen Award, Noor Al-Dayeh and Mia Hanna. When ADC Vice President Nabil Muhammad called to tell me that I received this award, I was filled with appreciation and gratitude for this honor. And this is not only because I was receiving this meaningful recognition, but also because I remember Hala Maqsood well, her grace and generous spirit, her wisdom, her vision for ADC and the Arab American community, and her tireless advocacy for the civil rights of Arab Americans and especially women. How fortunate for me to have actually known Hala Maqsood when she was a pillar of our community before she died 20 years ago. She was a quintessential model for leadership and achievement, and her legacy continues. A big thank you to ADC and all the staff over the years for the constant work on behalf of Arab Americans everywhere. You have always inspired me to think and to act, and I'm grateful for your steadfastness in your critical anti-discrimination work all these years and in making our voices heard. Gratitude also goes to my loving family, especially to my son Mark and my daughter-in-law Hillary, who are here tonight, and to my daughter Lena, who is out of town, unfortunately, and her husband Luke, and my grandson Artie. And big thanks also to my beautiful friends and all the people, and so many of you, all of you, with whom I've shared a commitment to the liberation of Palestine, to creating awareness, thank you, to creating awareness about Arab culture, to fighting for the human rights and civil rights of Arab Americans and of vulnerable communities in our society, and to elevating our mutual struggles for justice everywhere. So I hearty shout out to my comrades with whom I've worked in nonprofits or volunteered over the years, including Palestine Aid Society, Arab Studies at Georgetown University, Arab Center, Washington, D.C., the Jerusalem Fund, Growing Palestine, We Are Not Numbers, Grassroots Alexandria, the Museum of the Palestinian People, Palestine Museum US, ANERA, United Palestinian Appeal, NAWA, and of course, ADC. In closing, I actually had a different poem to read to you, but I was asked to read this particular poem because this is the audience really for it. I wrote this poem and read it a couple of times during Arab American Heritage Month in April. And so I'm going to read it to you tonight. It's called, I Am an Arab American. I am an Arab American because I tend the fig tree as earnestly as the dogwood and the pine, because cinnamon and nutmeg, cumin and anise inhabit my shelves and senses, because I bake both baklawa and blueberry pie for my family, because poems by Mahmoud Darwish and Lucille Clifton are my daily bread, because both Ibn Khaldun and Howard Zinn explain the world to me, because I'm awed by the blueness of the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. I am an Arab American because I see Gaza when a protester raises a fist in Ferguson, because Abul Qasim al-Shabi and Angela Davis inspire me to act, because I treasure coffee from Yemen, dates from Iraq, pistachios from Syria, as well as pecans and corn and apples from Georgia, Iowa, New York, because I write in languages that flow in opposite directions, because Arabic and English are my archetypes of sanctuary, because my name is unfamiliar to some and a comforting word for others to carry. I am an Arab American because I grow jasmine in Virginia to conjure the fragrance of my first home, because melodies of the oud and the guitar dwell in my ears, because I listen to Kulthum, Fairuz, Ella Fitzgerald, and Joni Mitchell in one sitting, because to me, the olive tree is an ancestor, a food source, a healer, because I'm the daughter of Palestinian refugees, and we are all immigrants, because I've touched the splendor of a brown child in my womb, because my children see more than one world, inherit stories that astonish and bloom. I am an Arab American because I want to protect the purple mountains and shining seas everywhere. Because I embrace Hiawatha's 7th generation principle to live knowing that all our decisions will affect the world for hundreds of years. Because I learned early on that karam, the Arabic word for generosity and kindness, is the most important belief to hold dear. Thank you very much.
You know, the first time I saw Zaina performed after I moved to DC, I was completely floored. And she doesn't know this, so I'm gonna say it now. I have always written poetry. That's always been something that I love to do since I was young. Writing for me was very cathartic. You know, it was a way for me to express my angst and frustration at having to have two identities, living two different lives, being Arab American and Muslim on top of that. When I saw Zaina perform, it actually sparked something in me and gave me the idea to start performing. And so that's how I started performing my spoken word in the DMV area. And I just thought it was really beautiful because, you know, one of the things that we talked about earlier today in one of our sessions at the convention is how, as activists, we all play a role in our movement. And there's a lot of people who say, well, I don't go out on the streets, I don't like going to protests, or I'm not good at being out on the streets or in a protest. Some people are like, I'm not really good in policy and I don't understand the nuances of being on Capitol Hill and how to talk to representatives. But we all have a place in the movement. And there are so many different ways that we can show our resistance and our resilience. And poetry is a really wonderful way to be able to do that. And so what Zaina does, I think we all realize, is just extremely, extremely important. So let's give her another round of applause. She definitely deserves this award. We're so very proud of you. All right, so now everybody's favorite part. It's not dinner. It's our favorite part, which is fundraising. And you know this is why everybody's here. And I do want to make a note. I honestly, you know, I came to ADC in January of 2020, and the pandemic happened shortly, 2 months later. And I will say that the amount of support that we continued to receive throughout the pandemic was inspiring and heartwarming. It shows what kind of organization ADC is, how revered we are in the community, and ADC is the longest, standing Arab civil rights organization, and our supporters, a lot of them were right there at the beginning in 1980, and so we are very, very grateful for everyone who continued to renew their membership, who continue to donate for our campaigns, who continue to engage with us on the many webinars that we hosted, responding to our social media posts, taking action for Palestine and other issues on our action alerts. Our community is very engaged, and we should be very proud of ourselves for being able to continue to do this despite all of the other things that we were dealing with over the last 2 years. So give yourselves a round of applause. And now reach into your pockets. So I'm gonna introduce Dr. Safa Rifka, who's gonna come up and start the fundraising and say a few words about ADC and what we're doing. Dr. Safa?
Good evening, everybody. So I will introduce myself. I'm Safa Rifka. I'm a gynecologist in town, and I moonlight as the chairman of the board of ADC. As you know, ADC, I see a lot of young people here. This is a 42-year-old organization. Probably most of you have not been born when that was established. And just for the younger generation, why was it established? Jim Aburazk was a senator from South Dakota. The FBI had a sting operation. They dressed agents in Arab dresses and kufiya, gal. It looks ridiculous. It looks like Hollywood. Didn't look like anything, but it worked. And they let them loose in Congress with bags and with handbags of money, bribing congressmen. And it worked. Some congressmen fell into it. But of course, we were upset. Why would they dress Arab Americans as the bad guys who's trying to bribe people? So Jim was furious, and he called people. Of course, I was young at that time, or younger. So he called people like Danny Thomas and Dick Shadiak and Bill Mansour and the big boys. And they met, and they decided to form an organization called ADC. And it has been going on for 42 years, defending the civil rights of Arab Americans, day in and day out. So just want to let you know, why are we here? So ADC has a board of directors. The board of directors are elected from the membership, and they are volunteers. They donate their time and their money to serve the community. The board of directors is comprised now of, some of them are here, some not, but the ones that are here, Tawfiq Barqawi is the guy there. I bother all the time. Dua Taha, she's the secretary of the board. Shada Atiya, she's here too. And Lana Nassar, she's here. Sam Hawatmi is here. And Alma Korkur is here. Absent are Haytham Faraj, he's an attorney. Abed Awad, attorney. Denise Sabbar, attorney. George Majid Khouri from California. And Dr. Suhail Tubia from California. So all of us serve on the board to help steer the organization. So what do we do? What does ADC do? Of course, we are not good in telling everybody what we do. We're kind of a stealth organization, and this is our problem, and I promise you, we are not going to be stealth anymore. But just to give you, during COVID, everybody was home, scared, doing nothing. What was ADC doing? Working, day in and day out. Give you some statistics. From between the COVID and 2022, the end of March, total intake cases, 1,693. Immigration cases, 973. Economic assistance cases, 152. Incidents of hate crime, bullying, racism, 146. Employment cases, 131. DHS, no-fly list, 85. FBI, law enforcement, 39. Prisoner accommodation, 67. Housing and general discrimination, 61. FBI law enforcement harassment, 41. Miscellaneous, 39. And that's only till the end of March 2022. So the guys at ADC are working 24/7. So how do they work? Well, we help them, we fundraise, and we give them the material support to defend all of us. So other than doing discrimination cases, what does ADC do? Another function. It protects our heritage, and it protects our culture. So everywhere our culture is threatened and our heritage is threatened, we are there to highlight it. A lot of you have been to our Turath incident or event in December that we've done, where we highlight some of our culture. But there are two major things we have done in the last year or two, maybe in the last year. One is to establish what we call a media project. What does a media project mean? everybody who talks bad about Arab Americans or Islam, we have a registration for. So all of you who have phones, flip it on and look now at adcri.media and tell me what you find. Come on. You're good with your fingers. Mike, my sons, go do it. Okay. So at adcri.media, you will find a weekly report of any hate speech or anybody who has said something derogatory about Arabs or Islam. So what is this for? Compilation of data. We live in a database society. Somebody wants to be a Secretary of Interior, and he has something bad about us. Guess what? We're going to make it public and let the public run with it. So we are making a compilation. We hired somebody for that, Ali Yunus, and he maintained that website, tabulates it, and tabulate the data. Another thing we have done, we have resurrected the minority business designation status. So what does this mean? It means us as Arab Americans, we have a problem of discrimination, of funding, of business, and of access to government contracts. So we are trying, we have already started the project called a minority business designation. For you who have phones, flip on and look at adcri.org. You will find that one. So everything is public for you. You would see what we are doing. It's on the website. And what we are doing, we have hired specifically a person for that. Chris Habibi, where is he? Chris, come here. Come, run over. This guy, I'm going to put him on the spot now. He is hired, and his job is to get this done ASAP. Because we have now an administration that we have a dialogue with. You can talk about this administration as much as you want, but this project, we put it to sleep during the Trump administration. We had no access, and we resurrected it during this administration, and we are reaching where we are. We have two strategies. Get it from the federal government, which he's supposed to, or even better, go state by state and let each state give us that, so that if few states do it, then we say, you see, everybody has done it, you do it. So what does this mean? This means everybody who owns a business who's Arab American can access government funds, can access loans, can access contracts, can access a lot of things. And that will help our community. So you see, we're not only lawyering and suing, we are looking after the best effort of the community. Thank you, Chris. Okay. So to do that, we need help. And who funds us? Us. Who funds the organization? You. You give us the fuel, we fly. You don't give us fuel, we're grounded. It's as simple as that. We have no other source. We're not clients of anybody. We are self-funded, so we need the help of everybody. So now I'm going to open up the help. And when I say the help, it means I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I am opening up with a $5,000 contribution for ADC. Let me see everybody who's coming now. We have a lot of people at the tables that will collect funds from you. There are these gizmos for all of you who are savvy on the phones. Just be generous, because this is how we get to do what we do. We are here to serve with our time and with our money. We all need money from you and support. Your showing today is fantastic. This is the first showing post-COVID. I see a lot of your faces. What is great, I see a lot of the young faces here. So for the young generation, you are going to carry the flag. This is 42 years, is going to be 84 years, another 42 years. So, Jinan, is everybody everybody at the tables trying to get the contributions? Okay, so we have people on there, so people who have an envelope, they can raise and we can come and collect it. All donations are welcome. Small or large are fine. If you write it to ADCRI, these are tax deductible. So be generous with whatever you can. For those who don't want to do one amount, you can do a monthly pledge too. It's like going to a club. Every month will be great. Remember that we have lawyers in-house, and we have media watch people, we have legal directors, we have people who go on the hill to do things and jobs. I'm receiving the checks, thank you. I don't want to bore you with reading them, but they are here, and I'm waiting for more. Few minutes and you will eat with good appetite. Sam. Dr. Sam Hawatmi, my very good, this guy serves with us on the board for the past 10 years, and he is as generous as they come. Whoa. $5,000, whoa. Thank you, Sam, I love you. Huh? Okay. And the board members, Dua, Taha, 1,000, board member Alma, Korkor, 1,000. So thank you, board members, for your time and your money. We have everybody circulating. We will update you about the minority business designation. Always go to adcri.org or adcri.media, or if you want ADC news, you go to adc.org. So there are 3 sites that you can access our activities. Tawfiq Barqawi, the vice chair of ADC and the one that I bother all the time, $1,000. Thank you, Tawfiq. Wonderful. What? Lana? Lana Nassar, our treasurer, she have paid a check for the treasury for $1,000. Thank you, Lana. We have a lot of talents here. And one of the talents is Hawatmi Junior lady. Come here. Sam, tell her, I want her to come. Anton Hajar, our awardee. Come here, come here. Okay, so the way I asked her to come is because yesterday she showed me a book that she is launching. Tuesday. Okay, so that book is now can be sold on Amazon. It has pictures, and it is the first picture in it. I will let her explain.
Sure, thank you. So I have a book launching. It's called The Year Time Stopped. It's #1 new release on Amazon in 3 different categories. It's the first global photo book on 2020. It encapsulates everything we went through from around the world that year, from more than 100 voices around the world. And we decided the first page of the book, published with HarperCollins, the 2nd biggest publisher in the world, that it would be about Gaza, So it opens up on it opens up on January 7th in Orthodox Church in Gaza, and it talks about this photographer is saying that it is the largest open-air prison in the world, and you see the most remarkable photo of them praying, and then it takes you through 2020 and all the madness of it. So please look it up on Amazon or Barnes & Noble's, Target, Walmart, anywhere. It's called The Year Time Stopped, and it will make history.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Congratulations. Wonderful. Okay, so we have more envelopes here. Who's going to pick them up? Samuel. Abed? It's okay. For those who are doing it on the phone, and we know that, thank you very much. I really appreciate all your help. I know it is stealth contribution, but let me tell you, from the bottom of our heart, thank you for making our job easier. Thank you and bon appetit. So through dinner, we will have people going around the table picking up envelopes. So you can eat and write. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can kindly start taking your seats so we can continue the program. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you can kindly start to take your seats so we can continue the program. Thank you.
If we can have everyone please take your seats. We want to continue our program so we can have you leave at a decent hour tonight. Did you take my paper? If everyone can please take their seats. Otherwise, I'm going to bring Dr. Safa up again for fundraising round 2. Whoever's doing that, thank you. I can't see. I promise we will let you mingle at the end of the evening.
This year we're giving to, you've got the two names.
I have Moon's name and the other one is Mia. Okay. Are we ready to finish the program? Did everybody enjoy their dinner? Okay, be honest though, because I know Arabs. How many of you thought that the meat was undercooked? How many of you sent it back to be well done? Because that's literally what my parents would do anytime we went to a wedding and they served meat. They'd like, no red, well done. But the food was great. The hotel staff has been wonderful. Let's give them another round of applause for serving dinner. They're coming around with coffee and tea, and I know dessert will be out shortly. So I'm not the only sweet part of the evening. You'll actually get some dessert. I was told to turn up my jokes, so I'm gonna do it. I'm super excited to... Okay, I was looking for you, and I was so worried you left the room. So one of the things that ADC does, and one of the things that we like to do is obviously encourage Arab American youth with their studies, their professional careers, their endeavors. And we give out scholarships every year in honor of Dr. Jack Shaheen, who was a huge advocate for Arab American media representation, wrote the book Real Bad Arabs, and in his honor and to continue his legacy, we give out scholarships in his name. And this year we have 2 recipients, one of whom is with us, and I would like to invite her to the stage. It's always given to a student that is studying media and communication, and we all know how important it is for Arab American representation in the media. And we know that that is something, as Dr. Safa mentioned earlier, something that ADC has been a part of for a very long time. And we know that we don't always get portrayed in the best light, whether it's the news, whether it's movies, whether it's books. I always see very small microaggressions when I go back and read a lot of the books that I read growing up. So it's very important that we continue this legacy. So I would like to invite Noor Al-Daya, who's gonna come up. And we'd like to recognize her for the work that she is doing and give her some time to do a little speech.
Thank you. Oh, is this thing on? I'm just kidding. Well, hi everybody, and thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today amongst you all, and even more to be accepting this award. This scholarship is especially meaningful to me given the immense influence that Dr. Jack G. Shaheen has had on my own work. So I'm going to introduce myself. Hi, my name is Noor Al-Daya. I'm from Torrance, California, and I'm the daughter of a Syrian father and a Palestinian mother. I am currently an undergraduate film and media student at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. At Emory, I have been able to focus my studies on the representation of the Middle East and North Africa in Western media. As was mentioned in some of the panels earlier today, the media is an essential force behind liberation, our liberation. Additionally, it acts as an educational tool for those who consume it. Therefore, negative depictions of any demographic within our media can serve as the only known information about that culture. I'm sure we can all relate to that in some way. As has been seen in Dr. Shaheen's work, the West has failed to portray the nuanced and vast reality of MENA life. I remember the first time I heard about Real Bad Arabs and how absolutely elated I was to find out that there was someone who has dedicated their whole life to this subject. I actually have a small anecdote about the book. I had just learned about Real Bad Arabs, and I decided, well, I need my own copy of it, obviously. And I'm in college, so I buy the used version because, like, money isn't flowing out of these pockets right now. And it comes, and it was signed by Dr. Shaheen. And he had passed in 2017, and I looked at this book that I had gotten, and this man whose work meant so much to me, and I have his signature. And it was just, it felt like I was on the right track. And to stand here today and receive an award named after him just feels surreal to me. So to tell you where the money will be going, this scholarship money will be going directly towards funding my senior honors thesis. My thesis will be a photography project focused on queer Middle Eastern North African women and gender nonconforming individuals. I feel like this is a group of severely underrepresented folks. I can't speak. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I hope that my work is able to feature a group of people who are so often overlooked in our media. Our culture is so beautiful, and it is not tied to a singular identity or experience. I have so many people to thank for getting me to this position today, but I'll keep it brief. Firstly, thank you to ADC for providing me with this amazing opportunity. Next, my family and friends who have never ceased in their encouragement and support of my work. To my professors, more especially Dr. Risha, Dr. Francisco, Dr. Smith-Shamade, Professor Silverman, and Professor Rogers, you have all provided me with the tools to be able to reach this part of my life. I hope that the future of Western film and media includes the nuanced representation that we deserve and which the world deserves to see. With this award, I hope to carry this mission and this message forward. Thank you so much.
I actually am really inspired by you, Noor, and I think it continues what we were discussing earlier today in one of the panels that I moderated, the kids are all right. And I really, truly believe that because the work that a lot of the youth are doing nowadays, and I see actually a lot of youth in here, which is amazing, and I think it's amazing that we are now starting to see an emergence of younger faces that are going to carry on the legacy and the work of everyone who set that foundation for us in the previous generations. I'm not calling anyone old, okay? Just relax. But I think it's very important, the things that we're focusing on, the intersectionality of issues that are affecting our communities nowadays, and being able to really bring that to light with projects like the one that she's doing with photography. And before we move on to the next awardee, I actually want to recognize the other scholarship recipient, Mia Hanna, who is not here tonight with us, but she also is a recipient of the Jack Shaheen Scholarship, so I just wanted to also recognize her as well and the work that she is doing. So our next awardee is someone very special to me for certain reasons that I will not mention. But to introduce her, actually, it's kind of interesting that Noor talked about this photo project, because the person that's introducing her, Christine Hawatmeh, is actually has published already a book that is going to be released on Tuesday. And this book is a global book on the pandemic, 2020, with 200 images and stories from 100 photographers from around the world. And I actually saw a preview of this book last night, and it was absolutely incredible to see so I know that for us in America, we had a very different experience when it came to the pandemic. And we as Americans can be very selfish. And we weren't really knowing what was going on outside of our borders because we were so focused on survival, which is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But seeing the images in this book and the stories that accompanied these images is so moving, and it is such a brilliant project. Christine, I have to tell you, that's absolutely amazing. So can we give her a round of applause for that? She is, so we wanna make sure it hits New York Times bestseller. So on Tuesday, she has 1 week in order to make that goal. So we wanna make sure everybody goes on there and actually purchases the book and supports her. So I'd like to welcome her to the stage to announce our next recipient of the Rose Nader Award.
I definitely have the best award to give tonight, and I'm so excited that and so honored that I am the one that gets to do this, and such a special time in my life. So each year, ADC honors Rose Nader by presenting an award on her behalf to an individual with unwavering dedication and commitment to the values of equality and justice. For the younger people that might not know, Rose Nader was born in 1906 and emigrated from Lebanon. She was a role model for her children and community. She had a dramatic impact on all those who came in contact with her. She was the mother of one of the reasons we are safe in our cars today when we drive, thanks to Ralph Nader, her son. The mother of Professor Laura Nader, community advocate Shafiq Nader, and social scientist Claire Nader. The family usually gives this award, so thank you for allowing me this honor. Dad, I'm changing my last name. In the 1950s, after a disastrous flood, Rose famously pressed then Senator Prescott Bush in a public gathering to pledge to push for a dry dam by not letting go of his handshake until he had promised to do so. And it was built. With that same spirit of determination and commitment, the Rose Nader Award goes to Leila Fadel. I want to focus on why we should invest in our community. And after what we just saw, it really confirms that for me. Leila won a Jack Shaheen Scholarship almost 20 years ago. It was her kickstart into journalism school, and here we are celebrating her remarkable career that I think is just firing up. Leila Fadel is a Lebanese-American journalist, you can come up, and the host of Morning Edition, as well as NPR's morning news podcast, Up First. When I told my friend, who was a big fan of hers, she has a lot of fans, that I was introducing this award, she said, you know, it's her thing that she says her name, Leila Fadel, non-Americanized. I asked Leila about this, and she said she just said it because she just needed to say her name and did not realize the positive impact it would take on. She has allowed people to be seen and heard. As one of her listeners said, it's like a private moment of empowerment for Arabic-speaking listeners. As a national correspondent, Fadl consistently reported on the fault lines of a divided nation. She flew to Minneapolis in the midst of a pandemic as the city erupted in grief and anger over the killing of George Floyd. She's reported on policing and race, on American Muslim communities, and on the jarring inequities the coronavirus laid bare in the healthcare system. Her Muslims in America, a New Generation series in collaboration with National Geographic, won the prestigious Gold Zahir Prize in 2019. Previously, she was NPR's international correspondent based in Cairo and covered the wave of revolts in the Middle East and their aftermaths in Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and beyond. To summarize, this brave lady, in her own words from her recent speech as a commencement speaker at Northeastern, she said, "In moments of fear, I found urgency and a clear understanding of why I had chosen to give a platform to those who needed it the most. Fear can be debilitating, but it can also be our greatest motivator for good in this world, even when it feels too hard, too big, too unsolvable." Congratulations.
Up here. I can't really see anything. First of all, thank you so much for that introduction. I think it was one of the most humbling intros I've ever had, but it's also extremely humbling to be up here after all of the other honorees. And I feel like it's actually a little unfair because, I don't know, I feel outshined. I don't know what to say after everything that was said. But what I will say is, when I think about why I got into journalism, into storytelling, I did it because so often I didn't see people that sounded like me and my family, my father, my friends, people that look like all of you in this room. So often I felt that they were depicted as victim or villain and no in between, that they didn't get to be full humans when it came to media portrayals, which was why it was such an honor when I did get that Jack Shaheen Scholarship. He checked in on me throughout my career until he passed away in 2017. And when I started telling stories, I did it in a way that allowed people to be full humans, or at least I hoped I did, where they could be cowardly or brave, heroic, survivors, abusers, the abused. They could be all the things that make us people. And as I did that, I looked around me, and it was in the post-9/11 era that I really started to work on becoming a journalist. There were so many other Arab Americans that were joining this industry with me. Tonight, I have two of my closest friends with me, Hannah Alem from the Washington Post, Shada Al-Awsi. We covered the Iraq War together. And we made sure together that we depicted the impact of US policy there, of an invasion, of an occupation, not through the eyes of Washington, but through the eyes of Iraq. And that's what I think about every time I tell a story, and not just about Arab and Muslim communities. When I tell stories about marginalized communities and all the things they don't always get to say, because so often stories are told through a window and not through a mirror. And so I want to be a mirror every day. I did plan to speak to you for about 2 hours, but there is a show for that. So if you want to hear me speak for 2 hours with the co-host and a bunch of NPR correspondents, you can listen on Morning Edition. But it really is an honor to be in this room. And when I talk about representation, I don't talk about activism and advocacy. I don't see myself that way. But I do see it as fairness and truth. And truth is about making everybody be seen. It's about showing the impact of policies even when it's not popular and hard to talk about, because truth is truth. I'm trying to think of all the things I've forgotten to say. As you can tell, I'm geographically challenged. I came on the stage the wrong way. It's just a big honor to have this award. And when I think about equity and justice, it really is the stories, not the storyteller, but the people I tell stories about. Those are the people that talk about equity and justice, that fight for it, that fight for change, the people who survive abuse or repression in the face of a powerful individual, a system, a nation, an invader, an occupier. And when we talk about bravery, it's also the people I tell stories about, or the storytellers that literally sacrifice their life to tell ththose stories, people like Shireen Abu Akleh. So on that note, I'll say thank you so much for this honor. Thank you, ADC.
I'm still like very in awe of Layla. Layla and I met when she was working on a story. I'm not going to give any details, but I will say that she cares so much about the people that she talks to. She would check on me every single day. And she was in Minneapolis covering the George Floyd hearing at the time. So she really does stick by what she says and really emulates that in her actions every single day. So very well deserved. Give her another round of applause, everyone. So before our next awardee, I'm gonna make you guys donate again. Just a reminder, if you haven't donated yet, because you know the food came out and everyone was excited, QR codes are on the tables, envelopes are on the table if you wanna go old school. We can also get you like a tablet and like stone, and you know, you can also like donate that way if you really wanna go way old school. But make sure you make a donation to ADC so I can keep my job and afford DC rent, which just went up post-pandemic. Thank you. But, you know, our last awardee and our last segment of the night, I think, is something that kind of culminates what we've been talking about with a lot of the speeches and talking about, you know, allies, coalition work. We talked a lot about that during the convention earlier, how important it is that we're all working together with different communities in order to achieve liberation and equity for us all. And I am very excited and very honored and humbled that our next awardee and our speaker is an organization, a human rights organization that has continuously stood up, not just for the Palestinian community, but all oppressed communities all around the world. Very well-respected organization. And their new executive director in the United States is someone who has continuously showed up and has been a very strong advocate for the Palestinian people. And to introduce that speaker and that award, I'm going to invite our board member, Lana Nasser, up to the stage. And before we introduce the awardee, we're going to show a very short video clip.
Good evening, everyone. Human rights are civil rights, and civil rights are human rights. Tonight, we are recognizing an organization that upholds the two, regardless of where you were born and where you live. ADC is so proud to announce that the Voice of Courage Award will be presented to Amnesty International USA. This award is presented to an organization or individual that has demonstrated strength and courage in preserving dignity and human rights for all oppressed people. Amnesty is a global movement of millions of people demanding human rights for all, no matter who they are or where they are. They are the world's largest grassroots human rights organization. In recent years, Amnesty has focused on protecting human rights in the global refugee crisis. Amnesty speaks out for anyone and everyone whose freedom and dignity are under threat. Recently, Amnesty has shown profound courage with their report on apartheid in Palestine. The comprehensive report, Israel's Apartheid Against Palestinians, Cruel System of Domination and Crimes Against Humanity, documents human rights violations, including seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians. We are honored tonight to introduce Paul O'Brien, the new Executive Director at Amnesty International, to accept the award on behalf of Amnesty and as our featured speaker this evening. Previously, Paul was at Oxfam America. Paul co-led Oxfam's worldwide influencing network's efforts to change government, policies, corporate, and public opinion. For the last decade, he oversaw Oxfam America's advocacy with the US government and corporations. He has been an advisor to the President of Afghanistan, the Africa Policy Advisor for CARE, and an organizer in Nairobi's informal urban settlements. He co-founded a community organizing institution in Kenya and a human rights research consortium in Afghanistan. He was a litigator in New York for Kravis, Swain, and Moore, God bless you, and has a JD from Harvard Law School and has published on power rights for more than 3 decades. He recently published Power Switch, How We Can Reverse Extreme Inequality. On behalf of ADC, we thank you for your dedication, passion, and energy. Congratulations on this well-deserved honor.
Jinan, for this remarkable event that I felt very privileged to be here to represent my organization, to be in this room with all of you and this community this evening has been remarkable. It was great to follow Leila as well. Thank you for the important voices that you bring to the mic. The world, we all know it, needs journalists like you, more of them, and now. The Voice of Courage Award. I've been reflecting on that word today and over the last few days as we got ready for this. What does it mean? What does it mean for a human rights group to get a Voice of Courage award in this moment in time from such an important institution and community of rights advocates like yours? The Oxford Dictionary defines courage as the ability to do something that frightens one. That frightens one. Are we in a time now where speaking out on human rights is actually frightening? We're a 10 million strong movement. We're not frightened. In the end, perhaps what makes us useful, Amnesty, is that like you, we believe that human rights always begins and ends with one person, one candle of resistance and hope shining through the barbed wire. That's for me and for Amnesty why it was so poignant to hear your chair talk about the single cases that your organization has been fighting for in all of those different ways. That's the heart of what Amnesty tries to be about in its contribution. Just a few days ago, we got to say goodbye to one of our own whose life ended. I want to tell you that story if I could. It's been on the minds of many of us at Amnesty. Mev Porter was her name. She was a lifelong activist, and many decades ago, like many activists, she went in search of a prisoner of conscience that she could be useful to. She found the name of a man, Nestor Fantini, who was in a jail in Argentina, and from that jail, people were being disappeared on a regular basis. So she started writing Nestor letters. And then she decided that that wasn't enough, so she went down there. And she was outside the prison telling the prison guards and authorities that she wasn't going to forget him and she wasn't going to let them disappear him like they had disappeared so many others in the previous weeks. And Nestor was released from the prison into her care and custody. They immediately got to know each other, became friends, and they got married. And they had a son, Jonathan, who's now in the Biden administration running the Central America Partnership Program, which is literally helping lift up economic rights for millions in Central America. One individual working to fight for the rights of one other individual has changed the lives of millions. Thank you for that. I remember Mev now, and I'll send that vibe on to her too, as so many of my colleagues do. When I was in Ramallah a few months ago, I heard from me a similarly inspiring story from Shawan Jabarin, who I think is known to many of you. He's the general director of Al-Haq. And he told me a similar story about how he had been working with so many other Palestinian human rights leaders, and he was describing at that time how he had been designated as a terrorist by the government of Israel. But as the evening wore on, he started to reflect back on an earlier time when he too had been in prison. He too had received letters, and he said, every time I got one of those 400 letters, I looked at the prison guards and I said, the world has not forgotten me. They will not forget me, and you will not get away with this, and I will be free, and I will continue to fight for human rights. And that's exactly what he has done. So why does Amnesty get this award when the real courage is the Mevs and the Shawans of this world? I believe that the reason that we were chosen to receive this award this year is because we are joining you. We are doing what so many of you have been doing for so long in releasing a report this year to find that the crime of apartheid is ongoing, not just in the occupied Palestinian territories, but in Israel proper. And I would like to just reflect for a moment on why that moment of our joining this decades-long effort is important. We knew the leadership of this struggle was being led by Palestinians, groups that had been calling on the international community and those who fight for international law to recognize that this standard mattered and was being violated in the context of the occupied Palestinian territories and Israel. So yes, this year we joined groups like B'Tselem, an Israeli group, and who they too had joined and followed with the Palestinian groups who had led the way. We joined other international human rights groups like Human Rights Watch. Why was it important or even relevant that we added our voice at this point? We made the decision to start our research in 2017 when we realized as a human rights organization that the international legal crime of apartheid was not actually well understood or known. It was thought of as a term that applied to one socio-political reality, one history, South Africa. It was thought of as a term that applied to one form of racial discrimination, originally. Not by Palestinians, by the way, but by many in the world. And we realized that maybe we had a contribution to make in that regard. It wasn't just about racial discrimination by minority white populations. It wasn't just about South Africa. And it certainly wasn't just about a regime that ended in the 1990s in South Africa. We know the word apartheid is an Afrikaans word and it means separation. And we know that it has a political history. But Amnesty is not a political organization. So why would we use the word? And why would we join those who'd been struggling to bring the right kind of attention to the issue? Amnesty does two things. We apply international law and we apply evidence. And we do it to advance human rights. That's all we do. The word apartheid, and this is important, I know this is known to many of you, but not enough people outside of this room know this. The word apartheid became a part of international law at a very specific moment in time. In 1965, a convention was agreed. It was the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. It entered into force in 1969. And in that convention, it required state parties, and I'm quoting, to prevent, prohibit, and eradicate apartheid. The word apartheid. The crime was then later defined in the Apartheid Convention and the Rome Statute. Why is that important? Because in 1979, the State of Israel ratified that convention and committed to address that international legal standard in its own territory. And the United States, and believe me, I'm now a proud American, but the United States never signs international human rights treaties. It's one of two countries in the world that hasn't signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child. The other is South Sudan. It hasn't signed one of the two pillar documents from which the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was founded, the Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. It doesn't do it because it won't sign a document unless it is absolutely sure it can commit to enforcing all its elements. Well, it signed this document. It signed the Convention on Ending Racial Discrimination, which under Article 3 says you must eliminate apartheid. It did it in 1994. So both Israel and the United States have committed under international law anywhere apartheid is found under the definitions in the two documents I mentioned to eliminate it. For an international human rights organization, that meant that we had the ground to bring this case to the international community. And then the question was, are all the elements of the international crime, do they exist in the context that we're looking at? In 2017, we asked ourselves that question in another context. Is there a system of racial discrimination? Is it done with the intent of maintaining that racial system of oppression by one group over another? And are there crimes against humanity? In 2017, we found that all of those conditions were in place in Myanmar, being exercised by the government of Myanmar over the Rohingya people. So we went to the world and we said, this is apartheid. That's what the legal standard looks like, and we have to eliminate it. And every congressional office we walked into and every part of the US government we walked into said, we agree and we will work with you to do everything we can to confront apartheid where it is, because this is our legal obligation and it's our moral obligation. So that's what happened in 2017. That was the same year we began our research on whether apartheid was happening in the occupied Palestinian territories and in Israel. We took 4 years. We wrote a 280-page report, and again we found that all of the elements were in place. It was a system of oppression designed with intent to maintain itself, where the fragmentation of Palestinian communities from each other across not just the West Bank and Gaza, but across Israel, in East Jerusalem, that was in place. The dispossession of land and property, not just in the West Bank and in Gaza, but in Israel proper, was ongoing in a systemic way. The deprivation of economic and social rights in all four contexts was ongoing and being experienced by the Palestinian community wherever they lived as a form of systemic oppression. So we launched the report. February 2nd of this year. I will say at the time of the launch of the report, it did not feel like we were being courageous. It felt like we were just doing what human rights organizations do. The backlash was immediate and it was powerful. We didn't expect that a letter would get signed by 24 members of Congress calling for the termination of, well, my termination, or that a letter would go to the Secretary General calling of our entire movement calling for the same. We didn't expect that amnesty would be condemned for being anti-Semitic. That was hurtful for many of the people in our organization, for our members. Just in the same way that we fight against Arab American discrimination, we fight against anti-Semitism as a real human rights threat in this country. Calling on the state of Israel to live up to its human rights obligations is not anti-Semitic. We did not expect to be accused of having a political agenda that seeks to threaten the state of Israel because we argued that all those in Israel should have an equal right to self-determination. And perhaps most surprising of all, we did not expect that there would be no substantive debate on the two main elements of our report since the day it was launched, the law and the facts. Instead, we have been bombarded to this day with other facts. How can this be, this is today, how can this be apartheid when a person can buy luxury products in Gaza, the question came. How can it be apartheid when there are Palestinians in the government of Israel? These questions are a distraction. They're a distraction from the system that fragments communities from each other, that dispossesses people from their land in systemic ways and deprives them of the opportunity to live as equals, and we will not be distracted. So, was it courageous for us to launch a report or to address the challenges that followed the report? I'm not so sure. That's what human rights organizations are supposed to do. But I am honored to be here and to be at Amnesty and to accept an award where we get to witness courage showing up in so many ways and where we get to support the courageous acts of others all the time. Some of my colleagues in the West Bank and in Israel and here in the United States as a consequence of this report advocated around the report and faced significant risks to their personal safety and professional futures in those contexts. Some of them continue to do so. Some of our partners did too, including those who have been unjustly labeled as terrorists. There is courage in their actions, and I'm honored to be here to support it. But I do want to offer a last reflection on courage before I leave the stage. I want to go back to the definition, to do something that frightens one. Or as Nelson Mandela said, the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers fear. What we really need in this moment is courageous politicians to conquer their fears. Some people think that asking a politician to act bravely against their own short-term electoral interests is a road to nowhere. Politicians will tell you that they need to be in office to make a difference. I don't actually think being a courageous politician is an oxymoron. Most politicians I've had the chance to know do come from a place of purpose. Winning elections is the means and not the end of their lives. They can be courageous. They want to be courageous. Sometimes they know they have to be courageous. In July, President Biden is going to Jerusalem. When Secretary Blinken was there last year, he stated the position of this administration, and I think this took some courage, knowing how politics has worked in these United States, was, and I quote, that Palestinians and Israelis alike deserve equal measures of security, freedom, opportunity, and dignity. I think he knew when he said that you cannot achieve that goal without ending systemic racial oppression in Israel and in the occupied Palestinian territories. President Biden has committed himself to a foreign policy, and again I'm quoting, centered on the protection of human rights. Human rights are in turmoil now, not just as experienced by Palestinians and Yemenis and Syrians and throughout the Middle East, but by Arab Americans and Jewish Americans and black and brown communities in this country. The whole human rights architecture, internationally and here in these United States, is in turmoil. The institutions are under attack, and the world is now more volatile than at any time since international human rights came into existence as a body of law. The days when the United States government could do one thing in its own backyard and demand another in its foreign policy are over. The days when the US government could determine unilaterally the rules of the international order are over. In our multipolar, turbulent world, a rights-based foreign policy now faces deep competition from others. China's offer is deep in its pockets and light on its human rights demands. Russia is flexing anti-rights muscles in its own country and is getting the attention of other autocrats. If the US foreign policy offer, centered on human rights, is to be taken seriously, it has to be real, it has to be deep, it has to be coherent, and it has to be courageous. President Biden needs to go to Israel and demand the pathway for everyone in that country to enjoy equal freedom, security, opportunity, and dignity. That means ending the forced displacement of Palestinians, like those we saw in Masafer Yatta today. It means calling for the independent investigations for the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. It means ending the Gaza blockade. It means demanding that Israel lift the terrorist designation from human rights activists. A system based on discrimination and oppression is not stable. Equal rights for everyone in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories is the only way to secure a sustainable peace for everyone in the region. And fighting for it is the only way to convince the world that an American foreign policy centered on human rights is the best offer out there. That is the kind of courageous political leadership our country needs and our world needs. So, along with all of you, and on behalf of Amnesty International, our staff and our volunteers, we are so proud to join with the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee to fight discrimination and oppression in all its forms and to hold the powerful accountable. And we're so proud to be here today to receive this award in advancing that with all of you.
Wow, you guys didn't have to give me a standing ovation so soon. I'm not done. No, that was absolutely incredible, Paul. Obviously, you know, we did a webinar immediately after you released the report in February, which was an incredible webinar, so much amazing information. And, you know, the work that Amnesty does, like I said before, beyond Palestine is just so inspiring and incredible. I'm actually a monthly donor and supporter of Amnesty, so I have been for probably 7-8 years at this point. I believe in the work that you all do, and I just think it's absolutely wonderful and vital to achieving human rights for all oppressed people. And so, you guys, we're done. We made it. I hope everyone had a wonderful time. Real quick, before I forget, I know, don't worry. It was brought to my attention that apparently the lights up here blind people into forgetting to thank their families. Dr. Jihan al-Bayoumi feels very bad that she did not thank her brother and the rest of her family at the table for, you know, all of their support while she, you know, and friends for all of their support, for her award that she received earlier. And I personally would like to thank my friends who are all here and supporting me tonight, and I couldn't do it without all of you. You're kind of spread all around the room, and I couldn't be more grateful as someone who moved to DC 5 years ago. I don't really have much family in the area. My friends have become my family, and it's just amazing to have so much support in, your professional life, your personal life, all of your passions, and my friends are absolutely the best, and they know how much I love them and care about them, and so I want to say thank you. And to close us off, I just want to give you guys a little bit of background about my journey with ADC. So I actually came to these conventions back in the day, in college and right after college. So like 2000, I'm not going to say, I don't want you guys to figure out how old I am. I'm just kidding. So like 2003, 2004, and the conventions for ADC used to be like multiple days, and they used to have hundreds of people, and we used to have parties with music. And I know that we as a community can get back to those days with ADC. Do you guys agree? I really want to see our community bring those days back, because I feel like organizations like ADC and other organizations that serve our communities are vital in us continuing to achieve all the success and the progress that we've been able to do over the last 40 years, and to continue to pass it on to the next generation, and to give something tangible for the future generations, and for us to continue to be proud to be Arab Americans in this community who have contributed so many different aspects to make this country the amazing country that it is. So thank you everyone again for coming out tonight, for supporting us, and for being here. And we hope to see you as supporters of our events in the future. Join our newsletters online, join our webinars, follow us on social media, and I wish you all a wonderful night. Thank you.